There we go. Can you guys talk real quick so I can see how it looks on here?
Iwatu.
Testing, testing.
All right, cool. You guys look fine. Let me pull up the stream chat one more time. Okay. So, real quick before I start introducing everybody and things like that, this is V2. This is not Rebuild at all. It's just V2. I was gonna show gameplay of Rebuild, but there's some problems going on with that, as I said in the announcement, where well, that was gonna long story short, that was gonna try and fix that so that next stream you guys can actually see the game in its entirety in its current state and see us play it and that kind of thing. But yeah, so I am Multi. I am the project manager of the rebuild. That just means that I take orders from DC and Skulls, and I just tell people where to start and what they can do. Joining me is Sidemon, the leader of the item team.
Hello.
Yeah, they manage the entire item team. That means the creation of items, what they do, what they cost, literally anything involving items, that's all them. And then alongside that, we have WP, or as you guys know them as Whimsicals.
Hi, I'm just hoping you know.
Yeah, they're your always favorite overseer in the Discord server, mini overseer. And they're also on the dev team, but they're mostly there to help us get through anything or give us ideas that they have, because their ideas are pretty great and they are super helpful sometimes.
Oh, I appreciate the compliments.
But yeah, so talking about the rebuild, there's a lot of things we want to talk about. Thel, DC, and Skulls obviously aren't here. So Skulls and DC, they're keeping Moon content separate because that's going to be an entirely different ballgame. So when they get here in the next stream or whenever they're able to and available, they'll be here talking to you about Moon content, and DC himself, the leader of the entire project, they'll be telling you more in-depth info about probably near everything really, because they have a lot of things that they're doing and they're gonna get that sorted. And then Thel, he's working on right now. His current job is consorts and that kind of thing. That includes consorts, consort villages. Dialogue is going to be written by our writers, which currently is only one, which is Grim. But oh, you can't hear? Here, let me try and see if I can, because I have my mics all the way up, so I'm gonna see if I can get all of this all the way up real quick. Yeah, no, I have mine all the way maxed out. Stream says I'm going too far. Let me go ahead and turn this down then. Is that better? Okay. But yeah, so Thel does the consorts, their villages, their shops, things like that. So once Thel is able to get on here, uh, you'll be able to hear his input on the consorts and things like that. He also works on other projects and things like that. So, but yeah, overall, we have almost everything ironed out text-wise. We have it all written down in our game design document, and including a lot of post-release stuff. But code-wise, we've gotten up to land generation for the first ring. We do have basic alchemy. We do have combat. That's done. We do have building and houses done. You guys will be interested to know that you actually do build a house. In that it works on a tile system. So it's your houses are consisting of an amount of tiles that make it up that you actually walk around in, that kind of thing. And your server player would be building those tiles and stairs up, and it's multiple floors, that kind of thing. There will be a system later on that we're going to make that'll automate it so that later on you don't build all those floors manually, because that'll get very tiring to
Tedious.
do. Yeah, really tedious. But you place down things in it, that kind of thing. We can actually place, yeah, it's still played on the browser. You can actually place the machines down inside the house, and your player would move over them to use them, that kind of thing. And alongside that, we'll have, I believe it's 12, around 12 default houses styles that are made so that everybody in the session, up to the 12, will have their own little unique house so that they're not all the same. And they'll have furniture and they'll be outfitted with items you can use, including the furniture in alchemy, that kind of thing. But house building is really cool, and you'll also be able to go outside as well to do things outside of said house in the yard or whatever. But yeah, we also do have the guardians in there. You can, it's a guardian combat is actually already in there, and yeah, so there's a lot of things that we can discuss. I'm gonna try and not overload too much info, because if I did, we'd be talking here for a long while. But there's a lot of cool things I do want to talk about. One of them is how items are going to be working. So just a quick explanation before I let Sai take over is that items are a bit different in that in V1 and V2, the items, they were just given a description, a code, and then power and sometimes special things and a bonus to your defense and attack like actions. In this casing, it's still going to be a bit like that, but it's different in that some items will even have special attacks. And instead of just having a description, because they will, items are also going to have traits to them. So, like a knife would have sharp bladed, metal, wood, handle, that kind of thing. And alchemy would take those traits, split them up, and put those traits together, and then you would name it based on what those traits are, and you would give it a description based on those traits, that kind of thing. But yeah, Sai is more on that than I am, so go ahead.
Yeah, so basically the concept behind the item team is every single strife specialist should be workable. So I do know that like in if you picked a jokey strife specialist like keyboard kind or something like that in V1 or V2, you know, your choice of a gimmick would mean that you wouldn't actually be able to get all the way through to through the content. So our main goal is to make sure every single one works. We've got a variety that have already had progression across the entire gameplay setup. Those are hammer, knife, aerosol, and blade kind. We've got a bunch more that do need work still. But we also plan on bringing back wearables and consumables and accessories at some point. We haven't really. The main focus has been the Strife specialist so far. And we also are planning on making some unique versions of the entry machines. So, like how there's the hologram thing and stuff like that. So, hopefully, will be fun there.
Yeah, and there's a few that have already been set that we have been thinking about giving special abilities. Like for instance, you all know the Pogo Hammer, obviously. Um, so the Pogo Hammer, one thing we were thinking about giving it is that it gives you a higher dodge chance when something attacks you because you can use it as a spring and things like that. And then one of the abilities you can use in combat is like a spring-loaded like swing or something like that. But it's really cool, and there's a lot of things that we have ideas for, like the time-stopping hammer that John had. I think that was what was that? That was Ares' hammer. I can't remember. What was his name?
It was
Hephaestus.
Hephaestus's weapon. Yeah.
Yeah, that one. Art related to the alchemy items. Okay, so the thing is, so to talk about the art and things like that, um, the main thing is that we are going to be bringing the QIC back and things like that, but it's not going to be like the QIC you see in V2. How it works is, yeah, Fear No Anvil. How it works is that in this casing, the QIC is more refined. It's going to be a lot easier to use, and you won't get nearly as many unstable codes as before. And then while you do that QIC, if you do have like art of what you want to submit for that, then you can input that. And then that weapon will be available to all the players of that session to alchemize and that kind of thing. And then once that's done, you can also submit that as all that same info to the full team and the item team, which would be Sidebond's team. They would be the ones to decide whether that's good to go or not to join the base game itself. It's kind of similar to how V2 was before it all went to hell with the QIC.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we've got some guidelines and stuff that
Yeah.
we'd want to make sure QIC stuff would.
But yeah, you can't submit art, that kind of thing. And then in terms of Alchemiter upgrades, those are a thing we will be putting in to do a variety of different things. We have quite a few of them, but we're leaving that for the end right now with the rebuild. We want to get from point A, which is, you know, pre-entry, to point B, which is Black King fight. So right now the main thing is we're making systems. They're called what were they called? I think they're standby, not standby. It was base systems. Duh. Base systems where we put the baseline of how it's going to work, and then we build off of it later. But at the start, it's good enough to use to reach from point A to point B. So that's actually kind of interesting. Is the UI any more navigable? Right now, there is no UI in the rebuild, but we do have. I wonder if I can find it. We do have a reworked UI made by our lovely artist Deadlight. Let me go see if I can find that. I'm gonna go search for that.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Are we going to talk about Sprite?
Oh yeah, we definitely will.
Okay, I didn't know if you were going to bring that one up or not.
Well, while you look, I can cover one other thing from the style guide for the items. So, one thing I, as a player, was a fan of was the way that there were themed grist types in V1 and V2. So, basically, I've brought those back just as if players want to actually use those, they have the ability to. So that'll just be how we determine grist costs for weapons and such.
Okay, I think I found it. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Was that all you wanted to mention about that?
I mean, I could list them, but if you found it, you go.
For your well, for the people watching real quick, this would be the new UI. It's still the same as V2's, but what Deadlight did was they spaced it out a bit more, they streamlined it, and then we added a bit more due to the new things that'll be happening in the game. So there's an XP bar that you can see right under where the aspect vial would be. Then to the left, we actually did put in the arrows, and you're gonna use those arrows to move your character and thing like that. And then the middle one, it would be your interaction button. And then the rest we'd streamline this a bit more, but the rest is pretty self-explanatory. Did you actually want me to grab your guideline sheet?
I've got it up. If like I was just gonna talk about the different grist themes.
Yeah,
Was
go ahead.
the other thing. So yeah, this was something from the earlier versions. So there's like amber, barren, beach, block, which is all the grists that have a shape of, the cube, calcite, cold, diamond. Sorry, diamond is part of cold. Sorry. Dark, elemental, hot, liquid, metal, nature, oil, Radiant, Science, Stone, Sweet, Uranium, and Wealth. So those will determine what monsters you fight on your land and what what type of grist you'd be seeing around.
Man, I can't wait to wield the Dark Book of Oglagoth and just, I don't like your face. I'm gonna turn you into a horror terror tentacle monster. Let's just come on, let's go.
Oh yeah, that would definitely be a dark and dark and sweet. I think would fit that.
I don't
I
like
think
your face, gross tentacles.
I'm looking in the chat, and someone brought up how in every single game of Overseer, one person would put in a max level item into their sprite, and then it would screw everyone else over.
Yeah, I could bring up here. Let me grab up the sprite stuff, and then I could tell you guys how that would go, since that's something you guys are interested in. It should be right here. There's Dream Strife. Oh, right. I forgot it was okay. Our design document is a bit iffy just because it's structured as you would progress through the game. So uh,
Right.
sprites are a bit like kind of all over the place because they're, in every part of the game helping you. So let me go grab this part. Huh, that's odd. I'm
The
gonna have to
sprites.
ask DC. Yeah, no, he didn't write down the sprite stuff. So, well, I will tell you one thing. With sprites, I still find it odd that I can't find the sprite stuff. With the sprites, the power that you would get and things like that for your sprite from your prototypings. The main thing would be that, let me see here. I forgot he made like 8 different sheets. I know where it's at. I know exactly where you're at. You're right here. More detailed design. There we go. At the start for us, sprites won't be all that, prevalent, other than a little assistant to help you fight. But once we get everything set up, the sprite will be more active in your session. You'll actually be talking to said sprite. That's the plan anyway. You'll be able to talk to your sprite, and they'll give you information on what you're supposed to do for those that want to do, RP sessions. And the things you prototype with your sprite will affect how the sprite works. Depending on what you did prototype. So, for instance, if you prototype something that has special attack, like if you got that pogo hammer and you prototyped that, then the sprite would be able to use that attack, but you wouldn't really be able to choose if it did it or not. It just occasionally decide to use it.
Would the sprites have like text gimmicks in their dialogue, based on what tags they have?
Text gimmicks are like that is one thing we were talking about, but we kind of put that as a post-release maybe kind of thing. Mostly just because we wanted to get everything else out of the way. But when you do prototype them, it does affect how much power they get, and you can type out their appearance still. But text effects would be eventually a thing once we got A to B. When building, do we need a full floor? So when you're building your house, it works in, structural integrity. Basically, you can't build the next floor until you have a certain amount of floors first, or a certain amount of, tiles built on the floor that you're trying to build stairs onto to go upwards to the next one, because you need to have that structural integrity. So there's a limit to the minimum amount of tiles you have on a floor before you can build stairs up to the next one. But yeah, your sprites would be able to help you a lot more, and they'll have their own special things depending on what you prototype. They're not going to be super fleshed out until post-release, but they'll still be really useful. There's actually a lot of things that we could talk about. Jesus. Let's go here. One thing I think you guys will like is that there will be a permadeath option. You don't have to have it on. You can choose that for your session. And if you do have permadeath, dream bubbles will be a thing. So basically, if you do die, you're not out of the game yet. You just chill out in dream bubbles, and you can actually spectate other players doing their thing. And enemies, you don't go to a strife menu and select who you're fighting, things like that. Instead, they spawn in your house, and you'd have to walk over to them and fight them. And the amount of like what enemy types start spawning depends on what floor you're at. And if you keep building up, eventually you'll reach a floor that spawns a gate to your land. Gates are interesting in that, well, lands are interesting in that once you name them and give them their grist types, you actually can explore them. And I don't mean you click a button and it says you went exploring, you found this. It works similar to houses or dungeons. Houses and land exploration work similar to dungeons. It's just with houses, they're already explored fully. But with your lands, there will be tiles that'll be like mountains, plains, villages, things like that, and it'll randomly generate for you. And so you physically explore your land, and you can get quests that would cause you to walk to other areas and do things. You'll go to dungeons that are differently themed, uh, that that kind of thing. We actually have land gen done, but we do have land gen done. That's been fully completed. We just are trying to get more tiles for said land gen. And then other than that, we can't really talk about the moons as Sai is saying. DC and Skulls, that's their area, so they would have to tell you. But I do know that permadeath, if you do die fully, you go to those dream bubbles. But the next thing about land gen is that you can fully explore them. You don't know what tiles are on your land until you reach it, so you have to go into that tile to see what's there, similar to dungeons. And the main thing is the 7 gates you have. So your planet has 7 rings. I can actually grab that picture now, which I still find kind of funny. I put it in here.
It's very much a quick doodle and not a finalized product.
Yeah. Da-da-da. Okay, there you go. So this is basically how lands would work. Um, your first gate would take you to this red ring. That's also where your house is located. So red ring is first ring, second ring, third ring, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. The seventh taking you to the palace. Yeah, the funny thing is that this is actually right side up, which would spell out the 7 rings. But uh, it made it harder to explain how the land gen would work in exploration. But we found that just turning it, those 90 degrees, made it a lot easier to understand. Um, but yeah, you would explore each ring, and when you reach like you would go east, I believe, is to the right. So east, and once you reach east, you can transfer over to the next part of your land by exploring it that way. But the bad part is that takes a while, and you can be woefully unprepared for the kind of things you fight there. It's better to go through your gates. It's just not impossible to just explore from your first one because it's a planet. Another thing that's interesting is that actually, yeah. Did you want to talk about that, WP?
The ones I sent in the Discord.
Yeah.
Um, one of the new things that you may find on your land is the Veil. There will be transportalizers scattered across your land that will take you to certain asteroids, and they start appearing in the 4th ring, which, as in the thing that you showed, would be green,
Yeah.
I believe. So it's like near the middle. of your planet, and they're a different type of dungeon that you can encounter. Um, I'm assuming because I haven't looked at the design document in a while that in multiplayer aspects as well, if someone can reach your land, they can like join you in these. There's
Oh
dungeons
yeah,
and stuff
totally.
there, and they offer enemies that you would usually find on the what's called battlefield, like prototype chess enemies instead of underlings. And the first one will contain the ectobiology lab, which I assume you all know what it does, and it will allow you to append backstories to your character.
So would that mostly be for roleplay?
It is kind of a more role-play focused kind of thing.
I assume
Um,
it's an option to put a backstory.
yeah, it's not, you don't need to put a backstory. You can just append backstories to your character's bio. Um, yes, bad things will happen if you accidentally skip steps. Uh, like if you forget to prototype your sprites before you enter, you might
That
have just screwed over your session. Like, because we will have those be a thing. Um,
So would that
you
be like a hybrid null session, or just from that point on, it's a null?
it from that point on, you'd be fighting like skeleton consorts and underlings and stuff like that. Your enemies would be a lot tougher, and that kind of, it can really screw you over. Um, skip going to the Veil in this casing for now in our heads. There's two main uses, one of which will be a post-release thing, but there's two main uses going to the Veil. The first is ectobiology. If you're role playing your session as sending your meteor babies back to the past and you want to do that kind of thing or append backstories to your character's bios, you can do that through there. The second one, which is post release, I can actually grab it right here. No, no, no. Do. The It's called the Cross Session Lab. So in the Veil, you would find this network of laboratories, and it would be a dungeon. And once you reach the end of it, you would be able to trade items and boon dollars with other sessions. And a thing that we're kind of iffy on that we want to try and do, you can also try and do inter-session travel, like in the original webcomic. So if you guys decide RPable, um, that your session is dying, you can say you're just gonna go over to another session, using the bullshit space powers like Jade used. Uh,
Like the spirograph key in Jake's version of the temp.
yeah, basically like that, yeah. So that was one of the more post-release things you can do in the Veil, though, and it can lead to all kinds of cool things. Echo Selector. Oh, you mean
Yes, the Ecto Selecto is
mm,
part of
I
the
was waiting for this.
yeah. So the Ecto Selector is actually one of our favorite things. It's a simple thing. I'll tell you that right now. The Ecto Selector is kind of simple, but it gives so much. Because with the Ecto Selector, so basically, you'd pick a color, or get a color depending on your class spec. And that Ecto Selector would be producing slime of that color, and that slime would have different abilities, and you can do
so
a
it's
lot of things
basically
with it.
how it's how John had the ghost goop off of his grandma. The Ecto Selecto would be being able to take whatever weird slime your sprite uh, gives off and changing it to something that might actually be useful.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot more things that we want to do with it. That's more DC's area though, because that was more of his idea and his passion project for the rebuild. So he'll be able to explain that a bit more. But yeah, the Ecto Selector is one of the few things we're really excited about besides the whole project itself. In-game communication. So the thing is, we tried to do that, or to my knowledge, that was attempted in V1 with the messenger and the uh, pester note
And we got the
integration.
B movie through. Remember that?
Yeah. So the thing was that somebody had sent through the B movie script multiple times actually, and it kind of crashed that entire thing. And then V2, the team decided at the time to forego the in-game pester chum. They were gonna try and do it in the first place, again, but they decided that that was a moot point and wanted to develop the game more, and then it was rushed and everything. So for us on the rebuild, it's an iffy topic because there's a few of us that want to do it with limits so that you can't just send in the B movie script and crash the entire game for literally everyone. And a few of us are saying no go if they want to talk in it, use emails or go download Pester Chum or use Discord.
Yeah, like make a private Discord server for if you want to roleplay with each other is an option.
Yeah, so
You know, and
that's
I just thought about it. Weren't there those e-bubbles?
e-bubbles?
I remember I have not been through the near end of the webcomic for a long time, but I remember there being one flash where you were Mina and you could walk around dream bubbles.
Oh, the
Oh,
Tumblr
yeah.
parody thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could kind of see something like that where you could post like Twitter statuses, but at the same time, I would understand not wanting to host a server just so like your server would understand those and get them, so you could look at them all collectively. So now that I think about it, that wouldn't be such a smart idea.
Yeah, I mean that could potentially be a thing. Put text limits on the message. So the thing you got to remember is that in V1, that was literally their first time programming something. That's why they didn't think to put in text limits, and by the time it had happened, it was already too late. And then V2, there was going to be text limits if the integration did happen. But then again, V2 was rushed and nothing came of that. So in rebuild, if we do, one of the limits would be text limits on the messages. That would be one of the things.
So Morgan just brought up this sounds like potential extreme feature creep. That's why a lot of our stuff is being planned for post release.
Yeah.
So we'd be actively doing the original, like, get to the Black King content. That's going to be the main goal, and then after it's out, we'd be still tinkering on stuff as we'd want to.
Yeah. That's why right now everything is a base system first, and then we use that as a stepping stone to code everything else to work with it. And then we refine it, make it easier, and clean it up, and then done. So a lot of that is just post-release. What's up?
In the chat, someone's asking, will we be able to transfer stuff to other players, or will we have to transfer the grist and code to the other player?
Transferring items, that's always been a thing already in V1. It was going to happen in V2. That was actually one of the few things that we're going to program next. But in Rebuild, that's definitely a thing because transportalizers are already a thing. So you'll be having miniature transportalizers to send items to people.
I think in V2, if you got to the same dungeon, you could drop an item and have someone else pick it up as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's also a possibility.
I didn't even know that.
You can also just transfer the grist and code to the other players via GristWire and GristTorrent as well.
Yeah,
Once
but
you
how
get
fun
that
is that, really?
Yeah, I mean sometimes you need help. But I will tell you one thing: the what's it called? The stock exchange. We have been really iffy on bringing back the stock exchange because of what that broke V1 when it was implemented. So we're iffy on bringing that back. If we do, we might be putting a lot of limits on that as well, because that kind of it broke V1 to all hell. PvP and bastard options. So one of the things is that when you create a session, one of the options is you'll be able to decide whether PvP is, doable or not. I don't know what you mean by bastard options. You mean like
presumably breaking important items.
or like having
Being
a player play as more of an antag than a pro tag?
Yeah, I think that's the concept, I believe.
That's an interesting idea. Actually, I think we might have that as More session options. No, where is... Actually, I'm gonna put that in because that's a pretty interesting idea. I'm gonna put that
I
in.
was gonna say I don't remember seeing any talk about that one.
Oh, I'll have to wait for DC to let me edit. But that's a good idea.
I mean, we know that Jane managed to destroy an important thing and then had to uh, basically farm for grist to rebuild.
Yeah. And by broke, I mean people would go into the stock exchange, buy up all the grist, send it to people, and then the stock exchange would just reset, and it would either jack the prices up super overwhelmingly high to the point where nobody could use it, or it would jack them so low that everyone would buy every grist type forever and would never need it for the rest of their lives. And frog. Oh, frog breeding. So that will be in the game. Um, we have a few ideas bouncing around, one of which is having it kind of be like alchemy, where you take the frog breeding machine, I forget what its name is, but you'd get two frogs, hope their genetic code matches together, and then once you get a code that's close enough to the Genesis tadpole, then there you go. Another is just having the frogs and then just, you know, finding one and picking one. Just that simple. There's a variety of ideas going on. Um, the stream will be rewatchable. So what YouTube does is once the stream finishes, it loads it up as a video.
On the channel that it's streaming from.
Yeah. Uh, One thing about what that we do have in post-release that we're considering that would probably play into the playing as an antagonist is that we do have stuff planned for Lord and Muse and some other things. Uh, there always have to be a space player and a separate knight player, or can anyone choose anything and just have to do the roles normally assigned to knights and space players? So,
Um,
oh, you want
really
to take?
quick, the rule is you have to have a space player and a time player, not just a night player.
The way I'd see it is we've also got the concept of you can end up in a null session. So
Yeah,
if you don't meet the criteria, that might end up with your like if your last person who enters isn't a space player or you don't or not a time player or whatever, it might also spawn in the ultra tough skeleton bosses.
yeah. So, the main thing how that'll work is right now we've kind of come to the consensus that at the start you only really need a space player for frog breeding and stuff like that, but later on we will probably make it so that you need a space and a time player. So how it works for now is that you'll either when you make your session and you join it, either the first person that joins as a space player gets it, or when you're choosing your aspect, it'll warn you that a space player is required, and somebody would pick it that way. Or if you guys are just picking random aspects, eventually the game will randomly assign one of them the space aspect to make sure that this session is winnable. There's a variety of things we're going to be doing with that. It'll also be a player option where that you can turn on and off whether a space and time player is required.
So if that was actually toggled off, would the session still end up with frogs just
Uh,
on a land?
yeah. So what would happen would the frogs and the forge would be randomly assigned to a player that joins. But yeah, uh, and then alongside that, there's all kind of different things that'll be happening involving your aspects and things like that. Um, like certain class spec combos, like kind of how in V2 right now, the Heir of Light and the Thief of Light have their own special abilities. That'll be a thing for rebuild as well, where every class spec combo is going to have one specific ability it has to that combo. And then, every aspect will have its own role tech, and every class will have its own role text and that kind of thing. And it'll allow you to more like build your characters. The aspect patterns actually, Let me go grab that because I thought the stuff we were doing that is it was pretty cool. So aspect patterns. Uh, they're going to be the same as the previous versions. Uh, but the main thing is that you won't have to go to a separate menu for them anymore. You can pre-make them and save them, and it'll be in the Strife screen for you to use. And there'll also be like on the spot aspect pattern usage. And one of the things that we'll be trying to do post release is augmenting them uh, so that certain class specs have certain things that they can do that's special with their aspect patterns. Kind of like how a witch lets you do a special thing depending on what your aspect is. Like a witch of light can cause misfortune on enemies. Once we get aspect patterns out there, another thing would be special for light players would be manipulating luck or manipulating knowledge or something like that, or physical light itself. Really depends. Let's see what. There's a lot we can still talk about. Oh, my favorite thing about all of this that I love is fray motifs.
Mm,
Um, you do not have you will have ways to get grist you don't have, mostly through recycling and things like that. But
dungeons.
and dungeons, yeah. We're trying to make it less. How do I explain it? We're trying to make it less prevalent that you need to have more players and grist types to be able to buy or to be able to build and alchemize your special items and stuff like that. We're trying to make it so that no matter what grist types you have, you should be able to alchemize it, depending on what grist types are currently available to you, so that you're just not stuck. But my favorite thing is the frame motifs. So we're doing something completely different with frame motifs. So you know how kind of aspect patterns work already. So how frame motifs are going to work is that instead of having them have a set ability, uh, you create them when you buy them. So for solo motifs, the first three, whenever you buy them, you would set how they work. You would name it, give it a description, and then you would set mechanically what it does via like how in your aspect patterns work. You'd get a set amount of points that you'd put, and the frame motive 1 would have the least amount of points. Frame motive 2 would have more than 1 but less than 3, and frame motive 3 would have the most. Um, but combo motifs, you would talk with the player you bought it with, and you would work together to create it. Um, and you would be able to set things so like a light frame motive would be able to manipulate luck and knowledge and that kind of thing. So for instance, for example, if you took the Terezi's mind frame motive with Dave when she linked minds with different timeline versions of themselves before fusing them together so that they were in the optimum timeline. That would be a time player and a mind player coming together to create a combo motive. They would name it, describe it, and it would have a healing effect and a buff effect, and that would be Terezi's frame motive. So those would be pretty cool. It's my favorite thing that we've talked about, and that I'm really looking forward to. Also, as a general rule of thumb, we're trying to keep the game as balanced as possible. So you might play it and you might see that some things aren't as strong as they would be in Homestuck, or they're stronger than they were in Homestuck, that kind of thing. That's because we want to make it as balanced as possible because we want it to be an actually playable game. So think of it as like in the webcomic, Esperb itself was in beta. This would be more of the finished project of Esperb itself. Uh, there's still a lot we could talk about. What should we talk about next?
Did you talk about consorts?
We did not. So, oh well, that's more Thel's area though.
That's true.
So we'll have to wait till Thel comes around. Voltex. Okay, hold on. I play multiple characters myself. Do you have to link an email and password to a single character account? So we're gonna keep the V2 process of when you make an account, then you can make as many characters and sessions on that account. See a Blaine. But it'll work like V2 in that you don't need to make a new account for every session. Um, and then role text. So as I said earlier, I can actually go grab that. I love how he has it saved as other junk. So they're no longer called Rotex in this casing. They're just abilities. Um, so abilities you get, some will be passive abilities that activate on their own. Some will be active abilities that you have to activate for yourself from these Strife. So just as a heads up, in Strife, everything that involves combat you will be able to do from that Strife screen. You won't have to go to other screens to do it anymore, which will be great. But you'll get abilities from your class, from your aspect, from the combination of class and aspect, and then from other sources like your weapons, your wearables. Uh, it'll be all kind of different things. Um, and it's hard to explain like fully what they'll be able to do and what they can't do because it changes depending on what items and wearables and what your class aspect is and what aspect patterns you've made, and it's all kinds of different kinds of things that you can do. Uh, but there's going to be a large variety because of that, and so it'll be Strife will be different for every session for your character and how you play. So playing as a Witch of Light in one session might wind up differently than playing Witch of Light in another session because you decided to wear different wearables and go with a different Strife specibus and decided to have different role texts and or not role texts, make different aspect patterns, that kind of thing. It'd be like think of the main difference I would say. Think of how Vriska used light and how Rose used light. Rose used more of the knowledge than the luck manipulation, while Vriska focused on the luck manipulation rather than the knowledge. So it'll be kind of like that. Um, So Rose went with weapons that would require brain power, like her needles with their mystic abilities, and utilizing all kinds of things that used her, like wearing things that upped her knowledge or helped her learn things, that kind of thing. While Vriska utilized dice, which used luck to do anything, which is kind of a thing we're doing with Dice Kind. Um, and she wore things that would help with her luck abilities, that kind of thing. And as a heads up, post-release, trolls and cherubs are a thing we're gonna try and do post-release because we know you guys have been asking for that alongside the Lord and Muse. So just keep an eye out for that. Let's see here. There's a lot. I keep saying that, but it's
Multi, have a look in Discord if you.
look in Discord. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay, so let me pull this up real quick. So we're gonna cut it there. It's gonna be pretty. This one was pretty short, mostly because there's a lot we have to discuss, and this was as much as we could share for this dev stream. So just watch out for future ones. Um, just know that we are still actively recruiting for item working players and programmers, artists, writers. We're always recruiting. So if you can help with that, we'd always appreciate it. And just look out for the next stream. I won't promise it'll happen sometime soon. Just know there is going to be a next one. Who knows when? I'll try and start setting that up now to decide when and where, or what time, I mean. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I enjoyed sharing things with you guys. And as a heads up, completely unrelated to the rebuild, but it is related to V1. A Patreon was started for V1 to keep that up and to bug fix it and get that done as well. It's not related to the rebuild at all, so if you're just here for rebuild content, that part of the stream is done, and I'm just going to talk about this for the next few minutes.
Really quick, I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Earlier, did you say that you don't have access to edit the Overseer project design document?
Yeah.
I'm gonna send you a link to do that, and then I gotta get off.
Yeah, no worries. The rebuild part of the stream's already done anyway.
I just sent it to you through Discord. Check that out whenever you need to.
But yeah, so look forward to the next one. And as I was saying, for the V1, so what's gonna happen with V1 is that I'm working together with a very small team. You can like volunteer to help us, but we don't really need it. Mostly because V1's already finished. All we're doing right now is bug fixing it. That's what the Patreon is for. It's for me to hire a professional programmer to continue fixing it. And then once we have all of that ironed out, what I plan to do with V1 is to add content to it, fix it up more, and then just get more things settled with it. So if you guys want to check out that Patreon, I did announce it in the Discord server, which you guys can check out if you're not already in the Discord server. And yeah, if you guys want to help out with V1, well, there you go. And I hope you guys have really enjoyed the stream and talking with all of us. And we'll give you more info on the next one. And yeah, just look out for that. And that's gonna be it for today. Anything you wanna say before we sign off, Sai?
Just thanks for having me, and hopefully everyone got their questions answered. And if not, well, save them up for next.
Yeah, just watch out for the next stream. Yeah, I'll try and make it a bit longer than this one, but for now, this is where we're gonna end it. So I'll see you guys later, and I hope you enjoyed.